Airial, if I could marry her brain, it would be amazing.
If you need anything technical.
She is down to earth. She's fun. She's very easy to network with.
Anything systems oriented.
Just anything web dev techie that I don't understand, Airial has swooped in and fixed. And she's my accountability bulldog.
She is a queen.
Anything infrastructure related.
She is helpful, and she helps guide and answer all your questions that you have about growing your business and networking and getting started.
She gives me life. I mean, she just gives me life.
Airial Re'nal is your girl. Welcome to the TrepTECH podcast with your host, Airial Re'nal.
I just want to marry her brain. She's a genius.
Hey, and welcome to another episode of the TrepTECH podcast. I am your humble submissive, Scott Doucet, and I am here with the sexy, the flirtatious, the beautiful Airial Re'nal. How you doing, Airial?
Hey, I am so freaking excited about this doggone episode. And what I've been calling it is a sex episode. Oh my gosh, we got Asa, we got Delora. Scott, I'll let you introduce them. I'm just too excited.
So I am, like you, I'm really excited for this episode because I have two of the most sexually amazing people that are in my circle here. And I'm so excited. So Delora, I'm going to let you take the stage because as Asa so graciously put it, women should come first.
Yes, thank you. It's always more satisfying when we do, let me tell you. So I'm Delora Guinion. I'm a Mindsex Mentor. What that really means is I help people make a lot more money, have great sex without the shame and guilt that typically comes with those two things. And I've been doing it about 4 years, and I couldn't be more turned on by my work every single day.
I love it. I love it. So a little bit about you. You married?
I am separated, almost divorced, but friendly with my ex. Yeah, we were married almost 20 years. We have 4 amazing children, and, I'm so grateful to the experience with him. Yeah.
Awesome. And, anyone in the picture? Are you like, I hate to dig into the personal, but we got to get some perspective here. We got to see where we're coming from.
Yeah, I'm in the dating world. So if anyone follows me on Facebook, every once in a while, you'll see me put up a hashtag Tinder profiles because I get a kick out of what people put out there. I didn't jump right back into dating. I took some time to really get my bearings and understand where I wanted to move forward. And It was a lot of change. So, I wanted to make sure that I was approaching it in the best way I could. And I learned what I needed to learn. So one of the things was how to receive more instead of giving. And that was beneficial to my business and the bedroom.
Oh, snap. I like it. So that, I think, is a beautiful introduction. It gives us all a feeling of where you're coming from. Now, we know Airial already. She's single. She's ready to mingle. We know me. I'm married. And I'm basically married to the love of my life, and we're best friends. And that is just, let's put it this way, it's satisfying. And then I'm also a stiff compared to these three. So, and then we have Asa Leveaux. And you know what? No one can introduce Asa better than Asa. So I'm just going to let him take it.
Well, thank you, submissive Scott. I so appreciate that. So first off, if you are listening, hello. I dare not enter a room physically or virtually without saying hello as I enter a room. That's what you do when you grow up in Oklahoma. My mama would hit me upside my head if I did not speak. So that says a little bit about me. And yes, my name is Asa Leveaux. So I help queer entrepreneurs create their first $10,000. Why? Because I believe it's time to put the sex back in homosexual and making sure that all queer identified people can master the bedroom and the boardroom.
Man.
So don't you love that? God.
I was going to say, as you can see, we've got some common interests here, and that is sex and money. Oh, I love it. So I don't know where to start other than entrepreneurship and sex. Like, the two of them can be together when married just right. They can be the perfect combination, explosive. It can be the climax that you need, both financially, to feel good about yourself and, just everything you need in your life. But on the other hand, it can be so mismatched so easily, and you could be suffering for no reason. So I'm just going to open the floor. Airial, Delora, Asa, where do you want to take this episode?
Well, I guess since it's my podcast, I should say something. But I'm over here like on Facebook posting stuff like, oh my God, this episode.
You got to be present, lady.
Right?
You can't have your head elsewhere if you want this to be a success.
Have our head elsewhere. Oh my gosh, all the puns. So Asa, I know you've posted on Facebook several times how, when you're pretty much irritable and everything, that maybe all your business needs is an orgasm. Tell us more about that.
So I do. I definitely believe that sometimes when in business, you might not need a strategy. You might not need a prayer, but you may need a real intense orgasm to open up another part of who you are. And also so that you can actually be open to what's really in front of you in a way to focus. So for instance, I dare not make a significant business decision or a significant personal decision if I have not had an orgasm within that 24-hour period. I just will not allow myself to do that at all. I've learned over time, it's kind of like when you go to the grocery store and you haven't eaten, you just want to buy everything. Your eyes are bigger than your stomach. Like literally, your eyes are bigger than your stomach. And sometimes when you're an entrepreneur, you want to be fulfilled. And so you're doing all of these different things and not realizing that maybe what you really need is to release a level of energy that only can come through with sex.
Snap.
And within 24 hours of making the big decision. Note to self.
Yeah, no, will not do it. And sometimes, like for instance, even if I'm talking about a person, so when I'm thinking about something long term, maybe taking a person on a trip, maybe doing something out of the ordinary, my thing is maybe I should just go ahead and get a bottle of lotion, take care of myself, and then think in that moment like, nah, I'm good. They can stay where they are. I'm fulfilled.
Now I know what my problems have been.
Making decisions on a horny stomach area.
Yeah, so what?
Yeah.
What about us single people that have nobody to pleasure us? What do we do, Asa?
So if you have no one to pleasure you, you pleasure you. You are the subject matter expert of you. There's no one better to do you than you. Just like period. You know all your quirks. You know all your spots. You know everything that turns you on mentally. Why not seduce yourself? Why not? My thing is, and guess what? If it takes an hour, schedule it. We schedule what's important.
Scott,
there's a reason why you have Acuity. But there's a reason why you have Acuity. There's a reason why you have Calendly and all these wonderful productivity tools. So schedule it on your end so that no one interrupts your time with you. Because meditation comes in different forms. And there is nothing like starting a day or ending a day or taking a break between the day to take care of you for however long it takes to take care of you.
Delora.
A whole new outlook to self-care.
So Delora, thoughts?
Hashtag self-care.
Yeah, no, absolutely. He's got a really good, that is absolutely essential for some people. And if you know the book, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, there's a whole chapter called The Law of Sexual Transmutation. And it was written in the 1920s. So what they couldn't say then was sex was really important. They didn't make it sound like that when you read the book. In fact, it sounds like you have to suppress it. And for some people, they do. Some people need to, rein in or control the energy, the ones that are addicted to porn or sexting or, are distracted by everything sex instead of focusing on their business. They're the ones that have to take that energy and transmute it into the energy they need for their business and then reward themselves with something at the end, a nice little treat, a little massage, a little, session, self-session or sex at the end of achieving their to-do list or whatever it might be. And then on the other spectrum are the people that are really closed down and super in control and they're not open to receiving anything. And the beautiful thing about how Asa put it is him doing that before making any big long-term decisions allows him to access his creative energy. Because what a lot of people don't know is that your sex energy is your creative energy, and it's also your charismatic energy. And so the creative energy that they talk about in the book, they refer to it, you don't have to be woo-woo or believe in God for this, but it is your higher self. So it's the, the one-off, the crazy ideas that turn out to be the best thing you've ever come up with. Well, that energy is how you tap into it through your sex energy. And it doesn't mean you have to have sex necessarily, but you have to own that energy in whatever form that needs to be for you.
So this makes a lot of sense. And this answers a question for me, because I was always wondering why it is that as soon as I have an orgasm, I get the most sales, I have the most fun with my business. So the creative, charismatic energy from sex makes sense, because the longer I go without an orgasm, the more I turn into just this angry caveman.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it also, like, for people who are needing to be creative in their business, or say for writing, like I was in the process of writing something it was part of my mindset work with my own coach. And I had a block, like it felt literally like there was a block in my forehead, and I couldn't write what needed to be written because my subconscious was trying to stop me getting to the mindset answers that I was looking for. And so, some people might think they need to go drink or whatever it is to kind of relax. And I got back to the hotel that night and I'm like, why do I feel so blocked? What the hell? So I ended up masturbating. I cleared out everything. We had 3 parts of this exercise. I wrote the last 2 parts in half the time it took me to write the first part. Because what I did was I unblocked my writer's block, and the answers I needed to see were now open and available to me. So it's, there's health benefits. All you have to do is Google the health benefits, hormonal effects and whatever. But there's also the mental and emotional benefits of sex or sex energy that are like huge, huge, huge to us.
That is amazing.
I have a question. I have a couple of friends, at least one that's at the top of my mind. She's never masturbated.
Yep.
And she's in her 50s.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot, what, I didn't masturbate, I think, until I was in my 30s, and not because I was against it, but my friend said to me one day, how many times do you masturbate? And I'm like, actually, I never have. And I was like, why haven't I? Like it hadn't occurred to me really. But then I had to kind of ask myself, and this is before I was doing this business, but I had to ask myself, why is it that I haven't? And then once I started, I was like, oh girl, you should have been doing this a long time ago. But a lot of times people have patterns and blocks and beliefs around masturbation. It's bad, it's dirty. Women are it's often we hear about the dirty socks of men, like, their sheets are going to be all crusty and whatever, like there's jokes made, but they were also told their hands were going to get hairy or whatever. But so few women, especially in North America, were told about masturbation and what it actually means to your body. But it's very healthy and, something that hopefully most women can start to explore for themselves, because it also allows you to guide your partner into what you like as well.
And I mean, we always hear about men masturbating. That's what we hear about. I guess part of me wants to ask, like, how can you help those who've never experienced it understand how to do it?
Well, the first thing I tell men or women, because I've worked with some men who hadn't also, just because of their programming, often related to religion, it's all about exploring your body. So if it's too much to go right into masturbation, when you put on lotion for the next time, feel your skin for real. Like, take the time to really soak it in. And like, Asa said this so beautifully about self-love and, why not, turn yourself on? Well, that is the very thing. Like, so many people, we're so transactional in life, but also transactional with ourselves. So when you're putting on makeup, give yourself a wink in the mirror and just, start to look at the parts of your body that you love, because body image is a whole other thing here. But, start to feel what it's like to have your skin underneath your hands running over your skin. What does it feel to tickle yourself lightly? And then you can start to explore, what does it feel like to do this? I didn't know how to masturbate myself when I did it. And I was like, okay, let me just see. Does this feel good? Does this feel good? Like, there's no shame in figuring it out. And it's okay if you don't do it perfectly the first time. And there's some really great videos online about how to do it.
Deep. Asa, you have anything you want to say on that?
So, Delora, thank you so much for bringing up masturbation. Thank you. And the reason why I'm saying thank you is because I was 26 before I ever masturbated. 26. And the reason why, because I grew up in a denomination called the Church of God in Christ, which is what I tell a lot of times, it's so if you think about the Amish, now put those people make them black. And that's the Church of God in Christ. I'm like literally. So my parents could not, my mother could not wear pants or makeup. My father could not wear shorts nor coach T-ball. And so because of that, I thought that anytime I was to do anything sexual, the rapture was going to come and I was going to be left behind, literally.
Yeah, that's
like,
so powerful.
For real.
Yeah.
So I had no idea that I could do that and still be enough. I could do that and not be, quote unquote, a bad boy. I could still do that and still be totally and utterly divine. Like the correlation between sex and divinity was so separate and disjointed for me that it took many, many years for me to be able to look at my body, pleasure myself, and think of that as still as spiritual as when I'm doing, for instance, a tea meditation.
I love it. That's
the
so
divinity
beautiful.
the divinity doesn't stop just because there's a different action. I'm still loving myself. I'm still showing myself the best part of myself. And my thing is, now I have a lot more control over me and a lot more power to express and vocalize what I desire for someone else to participate in an act of love with me. And maybe not even an act of love. I don't want to, because I am sex positive, so I don't want to ever say that you have to be in love to have sex. My thing is, I can also tell somebody that when I want to have an orgasm, this is the best way for you because why? I am the subject matter expert on me.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Listen, my wife still guides me. Last night, I needed a little bit of guidance because apparently I got too excited. And you know what? That happens, guys. That happens. Be open to criticism and be open to critique. That is what I will say. Don't shut down when your lady tells you how she likes it or your man tells you how he likes it. That is literally them helping you to help them. The ultimate collabo. So something you said earlier, Delora, really struck out at me because we talk about sex positivity and you can hear, the taboo around sex is breaking a little bit. But there was one part that you mentioned about people who have to rein it in. Mm-hmm. And I know that's not the fun, happy conversation. It's a little more on the deep side, but I think that's kind of important to address real quick because let's face it, I think we can all agree that sex and money does not flow easily to everyone. You have to grow to a place where both can be intrinsically linked. But until they are, they kind of fight against each other. And I would love to kind of, peel that back a little bit because in my experience so far, the times that I've been having the best sex and the best income are times that I'm having fun.
Yeah.
Just in my life, I'm having fun. I'm lighthearted. I'm happy. Like I'm not serious. But the second money trouble or sex trouble starts to weigh me down, they both go completely dry spell. What's your experience around that?
Well, the one thing to keep in mind is that sex and money are the two most desired things, but they're also the most shamed things in the world. If you make too much money, you're crooked, you're cheap, you're, whatever they call Donald Trump. If you don't make enough money, you're, a scoundrel and, degenerate or whatever they call you. If you have too much sex, you're a slut, you're a, promiscuous, you're a gigolo. And if you don't have enough sex, you're frigid and you're a bitch and you're uptight, right? So what you want to do is explore what's right for you. But then also the people that are all over the place. Now, you've probably met them in meetings. They're the ones that are bigger than life, but they're also at one point or another, they're inappropriate. So they might be the snake oil salesman and you're like, I want to like you. I just don't understand. There's something I don't trust about you. And on the other hand, they're the ones that are in your face and you want to laugh at their jokes or whatever, but then they cross a line at some point. Well, they've learned to use their charisma to get what they want, but they haven't mastered something else inside of them. So they're doing it to either sabotage themselves subconsciously and that they're not aware of it, or that's the only way they've learned how to get attention. And typically it's translating to something that happened to them as a child. But what we have to be aware is what is the root cause and then how does it translate in my business or in, the rest of my life. And I had one guy reach out to me on Facebook and he sent me a series of voice messages and he was in tears, falling apart. And we had known each other in a business group before. And he said, I don't know if you can help me with this, but maybe I need a sex therapist, whatever. And we jumped on a call. And what it turned out was he was addicted to watching porn. not even to masturbate, just watching it. And he was also signing up for dating sites and sexting women, but he would, ghost them after. But he was happily married, and his wife knew that he was in this cycle of self-sabotage. That's not what they called it. That's not what they knew what it was. And what I was able to uncover with him is he was doing these things because at one point his father was running a business, and at one point he had reached like a certain level of income, and he became disenchanted with his business. And what that resulted in is his dad and his stepmom started to fight nonstop about money, and his father started to like frivolously throwing his money around and ended up almost bankrupting them, even though his business was thriving. So it was this kind of like juxtaposition for him. And so as a little boy observing this, what he realized was, if I make too much money, I can't be happy with my wife, and I'm going to, throw all the money away. And so the correlation for him was he was starting to do really well in his business. So he was setting up this self-sabotage for him unknowingly, and he was a public figure. And what had happened was he was starting to escalate in his sexting. He would start to put his real picture on the dating sites instead of before it was just catfishing. And then he would put his real name out there so that if anybody got pissed off enough, they could search him up online, and then, the eventual self-sabotage would blow up in his face. And he never met anyone, any of these women. They didn't have his real information until he started putting his name out there. And his wife fully knew what he was doing. And he said, I would delete the apps, I would shut down all porn sites, I would stop watching, but I still felt out of control. It wouldn't even last 24 hours and I'd go back to it. And just by him realizing the connection with his childhood and what he had witnessed there and the connection to the money, everything started to unlock for him, and he realized how he was doing it. And so we were able to help him take a step back and put in, some exercises in place to replace that behavior and able to focus, transmute that energy into his business instead. And, it resulted in now he's expecting his second child. His marriage was strong before, and she was able to see him through this, but he's like so much more loving and open, and his business is thriving.
Wow. Money and sex, they make the world go around, but they're the most taboo topics.
Absolutely.
And why? Just why? Well, instead of us embracing it.
Yeah, right. You think, why can't we just embrace it, right? But most of us, not all of us, but a lot of us were raised with a middle class mindset, which means that you don't ask for help. You don't take more than what you need. You give. You don't ask for, you don't receive things. Sex is usually tied to religion. We all learned it in school, or if we did learn it at all, sometimes it's not talked about. It's, the birds and the bees. I'll tell you what, there's never been birds or bees in my bed, but hey, that's how, that's what we talk about.
That's how you talk about it.
Yeah. And even when we do talk about sex in schools, like even my kids who are teenagers now, but a few years ago, I remember them talking about their sex ed class. And they're like, but they didn't talk about things like, well, how do I know if he likes me? And, what if I don't want to go out with him anymore? What can I do? And like those things are all related to sex, but they're also related to sales. How can I put myself out there in a sales position? How can I, one woman I worked with, she was very creative in her business, but she was not showing up that way online because she had, the switch was that she got married. And in her subconscious mind, married women are, in the kitchen and they're good little girls and they cook for their husbands and make babies. Now, they didn't want children, and she didn't even know she was doing this, but she had held herself back from doing that and wasn't putting herself in a creative way because her creative energy was attached to her sex energy. And she no longer had great sex with her husband. It was just the act of getting married. So she had, we do this all the time. We tie this thing, especially for women. You don't have, sex until you're married and, whatever taboos that go with it. And then for men, we, have them thinking that they need to bring home the bacon, but we don't necessarily tell them how to sell. Or they have to be gigolos in the bedroom and Don Juans and know everything there is to know about a woman's body, but we didn't even teach them about their own.
I love that so much. Okay. So I'm going to hand Asa the baton in a minute because he's far more charming than I am. But one of the things that you said was that twice you brought up patterns that were perceived in the family beforehand. And that is huge because I think about how many people grew up watching sexless, like, in sexless families where, mom and dad were really tight and rigid around each other and all of that. And so that's what they know. And then when they get married, that's what happens. That's what they think it is to be married. And then everything gets really difficult and tight when really, when you think back, you can think back to a time when sex was flowing through your household too, whether you want to admit it or not. Mom and dad were dancing in the kitchen to music, and they were spanking each other with spatulas and dish towels and, doing that whole thing. And you could tell when there was stuff going on. And it's funny to me that people don't think back to when things are good in their home and replicate that. They just go into these negative loops and let it just damage their success and sabotage their success. Because if you have anything you want to contribute, man.
Well, I would say about Asa gets the best of both worlds. I'm just saying.
I do. I really do. However, the thing that really caught my attention when Delora was speaking, and by the way, thank you for speaking. I totally heard all of that. Yeah, I want to listen to you more. But you said something about the gentleman that you were helping and how he was a public figure. And that part really caught my ear. And the reason why it caught my ear is that entrepreneurship, I've been definitely through different stages of it. And so I've been the dreamer, totally been the dreamer, working at a 9-to-5 and just dreaming, and then actually implementing that, and then feeling like you have to grind and hustle and all of that, and then allowing a more flow to your business. So I've been at different levels. And now I'm at a level where people actually do sometimes recognize me, especially if I go to a conference. I remember actually being at a conference, Lisa Nichols' conference, and her business partner, this is a room of 300 people, and someone on the other side of the room said, "Hey, I need this issue. I'm having difficulty." And they said, "Well, where are you from?" They said, "Oklahoma City, where I'm from." And they said, "Well, anybody from Oklahoma City that knows how to do that?" And I raised my hand. They said, "Well, who are you?" And I said, "Asa Leveaux." People started to literally, "Oh my God, that's Asa, like that's Asa." So, and that's a real thing that I experienced. I had no idea. That kind of opened my eyes to something that I had no idea about. But when you are a public figure, you going about sex and finding sex and sexual outlets is a real thing to consider. So it's almost like you have to think about, how am I sexing my brand in public? How much of this can be out? Because we live in a very, it's a real age where screenshots are real. You could be the subject of another entrepreneur or a potential client or real client saying they have a particular issue with you because of how you came and approached them in a sexual energy. So I just want to touch on that for a moment, because let's just face it, a lot of us are building brands, personal brands, business brands, both of them together. And when you don't have all of that energy reined in and you're just doing whatever you think you want to do, when you want to do it, how you want to do it, things come back because of that. Not everything is based on grace. Some things are really based on cause and effect. So that is something to definitely consider, especially anyone that's single, having an open relationship, polyamorous, all of those different things. That is not a traditional marriage in which you're practicing committed monogamy. So anything outside of that, please be mindful of how you're being perceived, and then how your brand may be perceived based on your actions or inaction.
You know what? I'll even go so far as to say, even if you are in a committed relationship practicing monogamy, you still have to be careful of how your sex appears to the outside world. Just pay attention, because you don't want to be sending out the wrong messages.
I have something to ask Asa. Have you always been open about your sexuality when it comes to your brand?
Oh, dear God, no.
Okay, tell us about that journey. Tell us about that journey.
I want to ask Delora the same question, actually.
So, listen, like, hell no. So, like I said, I grew up Church of God in Christ and military, 17 years in the military. So, all of those things I allowed and chose to operate within a very rigid possibility. So that said that professionalism looked like this, success looked like this, entrepreneurship looked like this. It wasn't until I'm 35 currently. I want to say until I was 32, 33 is when I finally said fuck it and got really clear about who I am and that I chose for it not to be a secret. If you do choose for it to be something that you don't want your followers or anything to know, that's your prerogative. But for me, I said fuck it. I desire to be Asa because what I didn't want is for somebody to romanticize a branded image of me and then meet me in public and then get the real Asa and there be this total cognitive dissonance between what they perceived and what was real. So I do my best to now often say, so I mean, I don't care who's interviewing me. I don't care who's writing an article or whatever. I'm going to be all of me and not the part of me that's tolerated, but the part of me that's celebrated. And that's everything. So the fact that I'm, bisexual, the fact that I help queer entrepreneurs, the fact that I am sex positive, the fact that, yes, I do believe in orgasms and money. Simultaneously, if you can do it, it's nothing like having a cell and an orgasm in the same hour perspective. It's just amazing to have, to feel like that, and then get a notification from Stripe. That's amazing.
Agreed.
That's just something. So, yeah, that's my take on that.
Oh, man. Delora, I want to ask you the same question, and then I want to kind of jump into positives. Like, what kind of good have you gotten from, sex within your business? I want to hear some success stories after this. But Delora, were you always sex positive within your business and branding, or was it more of a journey for you too?
I think I've always been sex positive since I was, I don't even know. I was the girl that, all my friends would come and ask questions about and talk to. So, when I decided I was going to run a business, my friends said to me, "You're going to be a sex therapist, right?" And I said, "No, not quite. It's going to be something else." And I started off with Mindset. And every one of my clients wanted to talk to me about sex at some point. And I'm like, okay, well, you got to stop ignoring that there's a connection there. And it was like I received this download, and some women in Montreal witnessed me take a gentleman in an open forum through a process to figure out why he was facing erectile dysfunction. And I was able to make the connections for him. And he was came out of there feeling like a superstar and went home and had the best sex of his life. And one of the women was she said, "It's not mindset, it's mindsex." And as soon as she said that, I knew that's what it was. So it was always meant to be a part of it, but I didn't always talk about it only because I didn't recognize the obvious links. And then now it's like I'm the walking, talking version of, the law of sexual transmutation, uncensored for Napoleon Hill,
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I was always open to it and knew that it had to be part of my business. In fact, my coach, when I first worked with him before it was Mindsex, he said, whatever happens, because you have so little judgment around this, you need to make it part of your business. You'll see how as we work through things. And it all started to fall into place.
It's funny how in every situation, though, it's a calling. It's a calling to be who you really are, straight from the bottom up. Like in Ace's situation, even though he didn't admit it right away, eventually it broke through in a big way. Like queer school, man, really? That thing is insane. That's so cool. I love that. It's a cool concept. And 4 years ago, that wasn't even an idea yet, and all of a sudden he burst through with queer school. And that's how he opened the gates and said, listen, guys, I'm bisexual and I want to help. And that blew my mind, and I'm sure there were people who did say, Asa, you know what? You're no longer for me. But the people who are willing to embrace you for who you are, I think they all rose to the occasion. And I think there's a lesson in that as well. And that's just one of the things I'm thinking of when you decide to be open about your sexuality, a success story. Because now, man, you're helping tons of people. Do you guys have any other big success stories from either from a moment you decided to be sexually open or as a result of having sex or anything like that? I want to hear some positive.
Sure. Well, for me, all of it's positive, even the negative, which, seems misleading, but everything's a lesson or an opportunity if you look for it. But for me, really, even though I was deeply in love with my husband when we were married, the fact that I've been separated for 3 years and, I had one potential client once, he said, "Well, how can you help me with sex if you're not even married? And I said, well, first of all, we can look at why you think that's the only time you can have sex. But, it really has just been a positive for me because this is my purpose in mission. This is absolutely what I'm meant to do. And, I can still do it. I go to public places and I can watch people, and maybe some of them I need to ask questions, but most times I can tell who's having great sex and who isn't, and who's really rocking it in business or not. And it's just this energetic feeling. I mean, it helps that I'm an empath and intuitive, but the fact that it just, happens naturally, and, the questions come to me and the links, it's almost like, God's making a map for me to be able to guide people through things. It just really, it's bigger than me. I couldn't stop doing this even if I wanted to. So everything's a positive to me.
It's beautiful. Asa, man, I would love to. And Airial, feel free to chime in with some of your sexy success stories.
Yeah, Airial. So my success story involves not necessarily a moment in time, but me coming into my own as far as what's best for me. So in the entrepreneurship world, a lot of times we allow ourselves to be bombarded and then to feed on these ideas that if you aren't like these particular people that have quote unquote made it, you are doomed for failure and you cannot even think about success. So what that sometimes look like, if there's a blog that's out or an article in Fortune or Forbes or Entrepreneur saying that these 25 millionaires or billionaires all wake up at 6. Now you got to adjust your shit because you think that now that you like to wake up at 10 that you're a fucking failure. Bullshit. So what that what that looked like for me was that as a speaker, I've been speaking since I was 12. I was being groomed to be a preacher, but I just say that they had a certain language and they didn't have a language. I mean, I don't say they didn't see what they saw from me, but their language looked like church. It didn't look like what would actually come to be. And so they groomed me into that. So I've been speaking for a while. And as later on in life, I realized that the way other speakers do things, they feel like they have to be totally removed. They need to be in their own little corner. They need to be in their room. They need to be without touch because they feel like they're giving so much. My thing is I give from my overflow. If you say, I like Iyanla Vanzant when she said, when you pour water or liquid into a cup that has a saucer, what's in the cup is for me. What overflows onto the saucer is for everyone else. And so I do a very good job by making sure that my cup stays full and whatever is sliding down the cup and in the saucer for everybody else, they get that. So I don't need to be secluded. So that sometimes looks like I want to have sex. And yeah, I was about the app life. So that means Tinder, plenty of fish, grinder. Now, I didn't allow it to consume my time when I need to be present. But when those times came where I was like, all right, it's time for me to have a sexual experience because that's what I'm desiring in this moment, I did that. I definitely did that. And I stopped the judgment and the comparison that because I was doing it for somehow I was less an entrepreneur, I was less of a speaker, even less than a human because I wanted to fulfill this part of me. And we all, sometimes you know this, sometimes you don't, but comparison is really the thief of all joy. And it was handicapping me in a way that was causing long-term emotional and spiritual damage by not allowing me to be the best me that I knew was present because I was comparing myself to everyone else. But my thing is, once they got off the stage, a lot of those speakers were just bitchy as hell. And I don't mean that as far as just one particular gender. They were just bitchy as hell. So when a lot of things that people may not see on the audience, when you're backstage and in these rooms and green rooms as individuals, you see different sides of them. They can turn it on stage, but in life, no, I don't want to be around there because their aura stinks. Like it literally is repugnant. So being clear that I don't have to be like everyone else was very real to me. And yeah, that's how I see success for me.
I like it, man. There's a lot of deep lessons there. And I think the biggest one is just the non-judgment element, because it's so easy to make yourself wrong about everything, especially your sexuality or how high your sex drive is or how low it is. Or, like if you're not matching up to someone that day, suddenly you're either blaming them or yourself, when it doesn't have to be that way. You can just be open and non-judgmental and cool with it. And I think that's, again, the big lesson, right? Is the more resistance you put into this, the less you're allowing things to just flow and be as they are, and you're not enjoying it as much. And then it creates blockages, that's kind of the theme I'm gathering.
True. And have you ever been in awe so much that you're like in tears and speechless? That's how I am right now with this episode. Because, I mean, I didn't know what to expect. I knew it was going to be a great episode. But it's like this was made for me in this moment in time. And I'll explain. So I have at least 2 books in me right now. One is a business book or about entrepreneurship. The other one is about sex. And I was thinking, I'm going to put my entrepreneurship book out first so I won't be judged when I put my sex book out. But now it all goes together. I see how they both fit together. And probably because the sex one is going to be the one that's easier to write. That's what I need to write first. And so I thank y'all because you inspired me.
And I do know that for you, especially, to say that is kind of a big deal because, I mean, anyone who tunes into the Veteran Woman, will catch Airial's story over there, and we won't go into it here because there's a lot of layers, but if you listen to that podcast, you will definitely be interested in checking out this book when it does get written. Trust me on that. Airial, I'd love to hear a success story out of you if you've got one, because I think it'd be fun to hear. But I think for me,
I don't even know. Well, I will say that lately, boy, this is too much information, but but lately I have a friend that's like no strings attached. So he'll come over about once a week. So I'll have that release. And now I'm looking back, hindsight, I'm like, oh, that's why I've been a better person, because I've been having that weekly dose of release.
True story, though. True story. I know I'm a far better person when I'm getting it than when I'm not. And, I think for me, I'm going to share this one because sex also links to productivity. And productivity is one of the most important things to entrepreneurs. And Asa was actually witness to this. He was the witness to this story. So for me, I went through a bad breakup a couple of years ago, and that is when I met Asa. It was in the middle of this breakup. And my first talk with Asa ever was about self-worth. And I was in a relationship where it was sexless, and I was allowing myself to get used for every reason under the sun. And Asa brought it up that I didn't respect myself enough to be like, no, I'm going to step out of this, right? So when it ended, I was devastated. My productivity dropped to an all-time low, and my business just didn't do anything. And Asa and I decided that we were going to, collaborate on a project. And I did nothing on the project, nothing for a while, like little things here and there, but it was taking a really long time. And then Tor entered my life, and I flew her out to where I lived for a week. And then we scheduled the next flight the following month. And in that month, I got done more than I did in the previous 3 months. And Ace's exact words were, boy up and fell in love and got productive. And it's because I had this full week of release and feeling great about myself. And then I conquered the whole fucking world after that. And so,
nice.
Sex is a big deal, guys. Sex is a very big deal. It's important. It affects your overall mood. It affects your productivity. It affects, but as Delora keeps mentioning, there's a lot of deep-rooted layers to this too. So don't assume because you're not having sex or because you're having too much sex that there's a problem. But it's definitely worth a little bit of reflection, a little bit of, thinking about it and seeing maybe where you have some snags, where you could do better. Are you damaging people around you because of, either your lack of sex or the way you get when you're not having it or the way you approach it in general? Just, take a little bit of an inventory. Again, don't make yourself wrong for wanting it or not wanting it, but reflect and just see if it's working for you or if you have snags. Be very honest with yourself.
That is so true. So for me, being a single woman, I've been married before, but now I'm single. I had to reflect and say, okay, what is it that I want? So sex was something that I wanted. And of course, I grew up with the taboo, you don't have sex unless you're married, blah, 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 blah. But I was like, you know what? This is what I need. And so that's when I had the conversation with my friends, my no strings attached friend. And it's like, okay, this is all we do. This is what we do. We have sex and no drama. So it's about, again, reflecting and doing what you need to do for you and having that conversation if another person is involved.
See, I like the sex and the drama, so I married a fire sign. But yeah, I love that. And it doesn't matter what your sexual orientation is. It doesn't matter necessarily if you're married or single. It doesn't matter if sex plays a role in your life no matter what your situation is. So I think the biggest thing Asa said was to make sure that it's working for you and that it's what you want. Airial, be upfront about what you want. Don't lie to yourself. Be honest. And then with Delora, just, again, don't deceive yourself. If sex is causing an issue, you might want to talk to someone who knows about this kind of thing, because it could be programming that you don't even realize you have. So as you start peeling back the layers and getting into it, I think it's important to understand that it's not going to happen overnight if you're struggling. And if you are having bomb sex and making bomb money and having a blast, then kudos to you. Make sure you're not hurting anybody, though. I think that's important. But I think my closing thoughts on this is, most of all, if I could draw on my own experiences, is that the times that I have had no sex is the times that I'm being way too serious with myself in my life. Mm-hmm. When I'm fun and I am bouncy and things are, even if my life is falling apart, like the world can be burning down around me. And if I have a smile on my face, I'm probably going to get laid. Okay. Like everything could be falling apart, no food in the fridge, the bill's not getting paid, the oil furnace about to run low on a -50 day, and that's Celsius for all you crazy people. Like we could be looking at that kind of day, and as long as I've got a smile on my face, there's a very good chance that I'm getting some. So if you can't be amazing right now, just be nice. And it'll probably work in your favor to some degree. If you're not getting laid, you'll at least make friends. So I think that would be my closing thoughts. Does anyone else want to close with something profound?
Well, I don't want to say profound. However, I will say that as entrepreneurs, your life sometimes does not look like everyone else's. And so because of that, I'm going to ask you to do two things in regards to sex and business. The first thing I'm going to ask you to do is get really, really, really clear about what it is you desire for yourself. So my thing is, sometimes you're just not available for sex. And so what you're giving into someone else's desire for you to have sex, and is depleting your energy so that you can have those sales, have focus on marketing. And sometimes we just have times like that. So I get that. There's different facets to us, and we go through different times in our lives. While you're getting clear, also understand your capacity. I had to realize that sometimes my capacity changed. And so, Airial, I totally understand the book thing. I get the book thing. When you're getting a book out there, it is balls to the wall. Like, you need to make sure this happens, especially if you've already set things in place, such as press releases and things like that. So that's real. And so my capacity sometimes looked like I'm up for you liking my Instagram pics and sexting on Thursdays. That's exactly what my capacity is. Can you do that? Do you have the capacity for that? Yes or no? But being totally clear about that and making sure that I honor and give people the grace and the space to say no, and then move around until I find someone that does have the capacity for that. And sometimes what I need somebody to be all up under me because I just did a live event, and the live event sucked everything out of me. And now all I want to do is watch Snorkels from the 80s cartoon, for anybody younger than me, Snorkels, and get Grubhub. And I don't want to leave the room, and I just want me and you naked with socks on. That's it. And I need to be clear about that capacity. So that's what I'm going to ask you all to do as a next step, get clear, and then understand your capacity.
Oh, that's huge.
What if we don't like wearing socks when we're naked?
Then you need to get clear on
Then
that.
please, then you don't have the capacity to wear socks.
I think I was kind of flirting there, but okay.
Delora, I would love to hear your closing arguments.
Sure, absolutely. Well, the number one thing to keep in mind is that your sex energy is your most powerful physical energy. So if any part of you is denying it or not in control of it, it is controlling you. It will sabotage you one way or the other. And your subconscious mind is also wanting you to stay in your comfort zone. So any change that you're trying to do, it's going to convince you, and usually pretty convincingly, to not move forward. So you really have to start paying attention to, where do you keep self-sabotaging? What are the things that keep happening? Because if you're not actively working on your mindset, it's working you. And so this idea that your sex energy is the most powerful thing, and to know that that's okay, because sex energy is about more life. And more life, yes, you can make babies with it, but it's also about creating something that the world is meant to have, whether it's music, a piece of art, or services that you need to bring to the world. It doesn't matter. And then it's your creative energy and your charismatic energy. And if you don't have any charisma, people ain't buying from you. And if you have too much, that means that you're not in integrity with your values, or there's something, a secret that you're hiding inside of you that needs to come forward. And it is tied to the shame and guilt. So that shame and guilt is what is manipulating things in the background, that's going to sabotage you, or make something happen that you don't necessarily want to have happen, because it's trying to come to the surface and be healed, or it just doesn't want you to be exposed, and you'll have to face with some pretty tough things, so it thinks. And so you really just have to embrace that this is, if it's not a part of your life, you're suppressing it. And people can tell. They're going to think, like, I always use not to get political on anybody, but I always use the example of Hillary Clinton. She's very suppressed sexually. And I love the woman. I think she's incredibly intelligent, but she can't sell socks to,
to Airial.
Or Airial, right. But then on the other hand,
Asa when he's naked.
Right, exactly. He ain't going to be buying from her. And then on the other hand, you have her husband, Bill Clinton, who everybody wanted to love. He was at the peak of his career, and he had a sex scandal hit him. And in hindsight, he could, I could point out to him all the times that he self-sabotaged. Tiger Woods, same thing. I can point to you. I can show you where he went wrong and why that was in his programming. But those are people that you're like, oh, I really want to buy into what you're saying, but there's something I don't quite believe. In both instances, people didn't necessarily buy into Hillary Clinton the way they needed to, or the way she had hoped, not needed to. It doesn't matter what political orientation you are. And they didn't fully believe Bill Clinton, so they went after him politically, but it turned out to be a sex scandal. And that is all to do with your shame and guilt that are, it's running the show, and you're not in integrity with what your real beliefs are. And it's layered. So, you could have $10,000 months. Like, I have a client right now, she's making $60,000 a month consistently. She's trying to break through 100, and she does it actively through sex. She masturbates, visualizes, not masturbates, she gets off with her husband. Actually, he's really great sexually with her, and she's able to relax, and she visualizes her goal. As she climaxes, she visualizes that money, and she completely shut down both orgasms. And she's like, girl, we need to get on the phone, it happened. Once we were able to work through what it was, she was able to not only get off, but also to visualize the 100,000. And so she's like, why is this an issue? I've been doing great. But it's because the belief that she had around too much money. And so just to know that everything's linked. So if you're not getting success somewhere, there's something that we can find for you. So, don't hesitate to reach out for help in that case, or to just start examining your own thoughts. That was a long-winded answer, but there you go.
No, I love it because that's deep. And now I'm going to leave this off with a funny story. And I also...
Okay, can I have the last thing to say? Can I say mine after yours?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Okay, so I'm just going to tell a funny story.
Okay.
I'm just going to tell a funny story then. And I do want to give some faith because, I'm married, and I feel like sex and marriage can be tricky sometimes for a lot of people, and as well as entrepreneurship, sex and marriage with baby. Let's add that to the equation. Let's just blow the whole thing to fucking smithereens right now. Having all these things in motion can make sex really tricky. Okay. And it can get frustrating sometimes because, you know, you've got your wife is exhausted because she's caring for a newborn, and you're running a home-based business and you're in each other's faces all of the time. And, you know, if this is anyone else's story, like, you're not alone. We get it. Okay. But one of the biggest things that I noticed in my relationship recently was that when Tora and I first got together, and I didn't realize it at the time, but she was my muse. She was my motivation to really step up my game. I quit drinking, I quit smoking, started doing this business thing, started turning a profit. And then when we wanted to move in together, that was such a big thing for me that inspired me even further, right? So like, sex with this woman changed my entire life, basically, because I made my entire life about having sex with this woman, you know, and now we are married, and now we have a baby, and now the whole sex thing is not coming as frequently as it used to. And that shook my world for a little while. It really did. I'm not going to lie. And did I know my sales went down? My productivity went down. My mood went down. Everything started to sink a little bit and truth be told, I was bottling it up. I wasn't being honest with her. And then one day I sat down with her and I talked to her about how she is my muse and how when things aren't circulating properly, I can't go out and make the money because I'm sexually motivated. And being a sexually motivated person, if the sex is not flowing, neither is me, really. There's a closed circuit and I'm not getting energized, right? And while I'm not putting that on her, I don't need her to sleep with me or anything like that. But I said, like, get playful. Kiss me in the hallway, grab me on the way by, you know, pat my butt if I'm in the kitchen. Just tiny little acts of that energy is enough to spark me, you know? And I told her, like, rather than try to push me to do what you need me to do, just dangle the carrot in front of me again. Be my muse again, you know? Just put that energy out there. Make me feel wanted, desired, like I have that forward moving purpose again. And sure enough, tiny little changes transformed our entire situation. Sales started coming in again. Money wasn't worrisome anymore. And all of a sudden, Tora and I were in a place where, like, we weren't frustrated with each other. There was no more pent-up energy. It was just the two of us being playful again. And just, it completely changed everything to just sit there and tell her, like, this is how I'm motivated. This is the purpose that you have had in my life in the past. This is the purpose I'm now missing. And I would love for us to find a way that works for both of us as we are right now, in the state we are right now, to just reignite that little spark. And that spark turned into a blaze really quickly. So sometimes you just owe it to yourself to be open. And now, and it doesn't have to be with your wife. I was open with my mom once about sex. I was concerned. I didn't have anyone to talk to. So I called my mother and I said, Mom, every time I have an orgasm, I'm getting splitting fucking headaches. Anyone ever experienced that, by the way? Like, has that ever happened to you? No? Nobody?
No.
Okay,
No.
well then you are all like laid back people. Because every time for like a week straight, I'd have an orgasm and I'd almost drop to the floor in pain because just every time I would climax, my head felt like it was going to explode. That worried me just a little bit, and I'm sure you can see why. So I called my mother and I was like, Mom, this is what's happening. And she went, oh no, Scott, that's not good. And I started freaking out, man. I was like, oh, what? What's not good? What's wrong? What's wrong? And she was like, I don't know how to break it to you. And I was like, what? And she's like, you're having an aneurgasm. And she cracked up laughing and hung up the phone on me. An aneurgasm. Turned out it was stress. Just in case anyone was wondering, stress can do a lot of scary things to you. So that's why I keep saying, like, be laid back and have fun, because if the more you stress about something, the worse it gets. Airial, I will give you your closing.
Thank you. Thank you again, Delora. Thank you, Asa. And always, Scott, thank you. And thank our listeners. Thank you so much for listening. Comment, let Asa, let Delora, let Scott, myself know what you think about this episode, what feedback you have, your experiences. And as always, I love you. Go fuck yourself, because I have a coaching session with my vibrator and I'm going to visualize myself coming money.
Yeah. Oh, I love it.
Best outro ever.
Thank you for tuning in to the TrepTECH podcast. But if you like what you heard, go on to Apple Podcast and bring her a 5-star review. And also, if you want to check out her service while she transforms mindsets, navigating entrepreneurship, leveraging technology, building relationships while bridging the gap in your business, check out TrepTECHacademy.com. That's TrepTECHacademy.com.